Hey everybody, I hope you guys are healthy and safe. So this is the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. This is Samsung's absolute tip-top premium phone, but with a price of over 1,200 US dollars or a little bit over $10,000 in Hong Kong, and a relatively large size, a 6.8-inch display and weighing well over 220 grams. This phone is not for everybody. Even though it's a beast of a phone, there will be some people who find it a little bit too pricey and a little bit too big to hold. So for those people, Samsung has you covered with the S23 Plus and S23. So these are the non-Ultra S23s. And yeah, because it doesn't have the Ultra moniker, so you would know that the hardware is not as premium as the S23 Ultra. But I've been using the Ultra alongside the Plus for the last several days, and the differences are much smaller than you may expect. So first, let me just go over the differences between the Ultra and the non-Ultra devices. So really, there are only 5 or 6 differences between these two phones. Number one is obviously the size. The Ultra is significantly bigger with pointy corners compared to the S23 Plus and the S23. Smaller in size, smaller screen, but also rounded, more gentle corners that fits into the hand more comfortably than the S23 Ultra. With that bigger size though, the Ultra is able to put a larger battery. There's a 5,000 mAh battery in here, but the Plus doesn't suffer too much. There's still a 4,700 mAh cell here, and then here it's a 3,900 mAh battery. So this is the smallest battery of the bunch, and obviously the weakest battery life of the 3. But this is still pretty good, and the other 2 battery life are quite epic. The other differences include obviously the Ultra has an S Pen stylus, whereas the other 2 phones do not. The Ultra also has a slightly higher resolution screen with a little bit more RAM, 12 gigs of RAM compared to 8 gigs of RAM here. But to be honest, the extra RAM doesn't really matter because 8 gigs of RAM is more than fast enough for these really well optimized S23 devices. As for the extra resolution, same thing. You would need to have Superman vision to be able to see the difference between the 2 panels in terms of sharpness. They look equally brilliant to my eyes. In fact, I think more people would prefer the flat panel in the S23 than the curved panel of the S23 Ultra. So then really the 2 major differences really comes down to the cameras. The Ultra has a 200 megapixel main camera compared to just a 50 megapixel main camera here in the Plus and the standard model. And the Ultra also has a 10 times periscope zoom lens. Now to be honest, because I'm someone who really cares about street photography, the extra 200 megapixel camera and the 10 times zoom lens do make a difference. But for a lot of people, it might not really matter that much. Because for example, the 200 megapixel camera here actually isn't shooting 200 megapixel photos most of the time. You're shooting a pixel bin image down to 12.5 megapixel. That's exactly what these 2 phones do too. They have a 50 megapixel camera, but they're really shooting pixel bin 12 megapixel photos. So the final images that you get from these 2 phones are similar in file size and resolution. The only difference is this one features 16:1 pixel binning. Now it does come into play when you're shooting in really challenging situations like extreme low light or really high contrast scenes. But when you're shooting against mostly standard backdrops, photos look very similar. In fact, where the 200 megapixel main camera most impresses me isn't when it's shooting normal photos, but when I turn on 200 megapixel mode, because that will shoot a full resolution photo that allows me to actually crop into the shot and get a lot more details. And that's something the S23 Plus and the standard S23 cannot do. However, ask yourselves, how many of you guys actually do this on a day-to-day basis? So really, the biggest difference between these 2 phones and the one that actually matters to me is that 10 times zoom lens. Because for example, right now there's some turtles right here. I like that with the S23 Ultra, I can grab a 10 times shot that looks absolutely clean, almost lossless quality. Now with the S23 Plus, I can still get a pretty good 10 times zoom shots, but this is a digital zoom, so the quality is not going to be quite as good. And if you want to zoom further to 30 times zoom, the Ultra is going to outperform the non-Ultra phones significantly. So that's about it when it comes to differences between the Ultra and the non-Ultra S23. So I think by now you should have an idea of whether or not these compromises are worth accepting to have a phone that fits in the hand a little bit better and a little bit more affordable. Now, these are the prices for all 3 phones. Obviously, even the base model S23, it's not cheap per se, but it is a saving over the S23 Ultra. So as I said, I've been using the S23 Plus side by side with the Ultra for the last several days, and other than the zoom, I really enjoyed my time with this phone and really didn't find it lacking in any way. Video performance with the S23 Plus is excellent, whether it's daytime or nighttime. And check it out, whether it's stabilization or the audio recording, everything is on point, top notch. So you're watching footage of the main camera of the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus. Okay, so you're watching front-facing camera footage right now, 10 megapixel selfie camera. By the way, please don't ask me why I'm still wearing a mask, okay? As you can see, everybody in Hong Kong is wearing a mask, just like everyone in Japan, in Korea, in Singapore, in China are wearing a mask too. That's just how it is in East Asia. We're a little bit more cautious with these things. I really like the in-hand feel of the Plus. The smaller 6.6-inch screen really fits a little bit more comfortably in my hand. With the Ultra, this is a phone that I always have to kind of reach my thumb a little bit to reach all the icons and the corners. Other people have also told me they think these two phones look better than the Ultra overall. And I think the Ultra still looks really good, but these definitely feel better in the hand. I am a fan of how minimal and clean the smaller S23 looks, particularly in this pink color. Now in terms of software, all three phones run Android 13 with One UI on top. The good news is the One UI animation this year around is significantly more fluid than previous years. Now everything zips around as fast and as fluid as a OnePlus phone. Because previously, I think OnePlus's Oxygen OS had better animation than Samsung, but now Samsung has at least closed the gap a little bit. The Ultra also has extra software support for the S Pen, but then other than that, the experience is exactly the same. I am generally a fan of One UI. I think the animations are pretty clean. I like having Samsung DeX, although I am not a fan of the fact that the app tray cycles horizontally instead of vertically. You know, I like that you're able to go into split screen multitasking really easily or open an app in a floating window. The multitasking gestures in the S23 is quite robust. Battery life, as I said, is really good here with the 4,700 mAh cell, able to go an entire 13-14 hour day. As for this phone, there's a smaller 3,900 mAh battery, and unfortunately it will not last a full 13 or 14 hour day if you're a very heavy user. But you can still get 12-13 hours of good use with this device. Now all three phones support wireless charging and they have IP68 water and dust resistance. Haptics on all three phones are also really, really good. So ultimately, if you're buying the S23 Plus or the S23, you're saving quite a bit of money over the S23 Ultra without losing too many features, unless you really care about zoom photography. Now, of course, if you have the money to spend, the S23 Ultra is still Samsung's apex phone with the best camera system possible. This is the most versatile camera system possible right now. I don't know if I want to call it the best because the Vivo X90 Pro Plus still has a larger image sensor. But in terms of overall, this is the most versatile camera right now. But this is also not that far behind. So anyway, that's about it for this review of the Galaxy S23 Plus. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I will have a lot more content coming up because MWC is coming, so expect videos on new Xiaomi, new Oppo, new Honor, a bunch of other stuff. So please stay tuned. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.